Linux might not be leading in desktop market share, but most distributions are definitely leading in features. Today I'm going to be showing you guys 5 features from desktop Linux distros that have made their way into Windows and or Mac OS. Let's start with rolling release. Windows 10 is actually the last version of Windows. Instead of new versions of Windows like Windows 7, 8, or 10, new features and changes are actually brought in through Windows updates. This model is called rolling release, and certain Linux distributions have had this for quite a while, including OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, Arch, Solus, and of course Manjaro. Those aren't the only ones, but those are just some of the most popular ones. Of course, with Linux, you can also choose distros that have fixed releases like OpenSUSE Leap, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Deepin, Elementary, etc. But in my opinion, I prefer rolling. Now, Linux distros have had repositories for a very long time. However, there was never a GUI for package management that was easy to use. Then, in 2009, Canonical released Ubuntu 9.10 with the Ubuntu Software Center. This was the first popular Linux software center. It allowed you to download apps and install them. Later, Apple added their own App Store as a free update to Mac OS X Snow Leopard. However, most applications do not use the App Store. There's only a certain amount of Apple exclusive apps on that store. Many people, including my dad, are able to use their Macs without using their App Store at all. Microsoft also added the Microsoft Store, also known as the Windows Store, to Windows 8 in 2012. However, the Windows Store has, let's just say, varying quality of apps. Plus, just like with the Apple Mac Store, the Windows Store doesn't have many essential desktop apps that people need. And again, back when I ran Windows, I'd never used the Windows Store, and my brother and stepdad both also don't use the Windows Store except for Minecraft Windows 10 Edition. Microsoft did release the Windows Marketplace in 2004, however, it didn't come pre-installed with Windows, and many people didn't know it even existed, including me until I researched this video. Fortunately, the Ubuntu Software Center has since been discontinued and replaced with the GNOME Software Center and the Discover for KDE. Workspaces, also known as virtual desktops, has been on Linux since both KDE and GNOME 1.0, as well as CDE. However, Mac OS X didn't get Workspaces until 10.5 Leopard, when Apple implemented their own implementation of Workspaces, simply called Spaces. However, with the release of Mac OS 10.7 Lion, they removed Spaces and added a similar feature to Mission Control. Microsoft also added Workspaces to Windows with the release of Windows 10. Still, Linux has had it since pretty much the beginning of the desktop environments we use today. Another feature Linux has had since pretty much the beginning of time are dark themes. Here is a dark GDK theme from October 2004, and here's another one from February 2005. Windows and Mac also have dark mode, but that wasn't added until Mac OS Mojave, which came out in 2018 for Mac, and Windows didn't have a dark mode until recently. Windows 10 didn't even ship with dark mode at first, but an update added dark mode onto it later on. Plus, the dark mode in Windows kind of sucks because only like half of the applications you're going to use actually work with it. Now for the last feature I'm going to talk about, which is the Linux kernel. Linux itself isn't actually an operating system. GNU is the operating system and Linux is the kernel, and Linux is one of the best kernels. Developers love it, and that is why it is super widely used on servers, supercomputers, and other IoT devices. That's why Windows is actually implementing the Linux kernel into Windows. The Windows subsystem for Linux allows developers to use Linux apps and Linux command line tools. In other words, Linux itself has been implemented into Windows, and anybody can enable it and use it within Windows without any virtual machines. As a conclusion, Linux has a lot of defining features, and I hope Microsoft and Apple continue to implement Linux features. Maybe one day Windows 10 will have choices for desktop environments, and you will be able to theme Mac OS and all its applications. But for now, all of these features are exclusive to Linux.